If you're looking to loosen up your watercolour painting, this tutorial may be perfect for you. I'm going to be painting some spring daffodils in a really loose style using Brusho, spattering and salt techniques. I'll also include alternatives to those, especially Brusho if you don't have it. I'm Karen Rice. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Let's get started. These are the materials I'll be using, and a full list of these I've made available in the description below. I've also included a link for the photograph, and the photograph is one that I took just recently on a stroll on a lovely sunny day, and these daffodils just struck me and I just thought I have to take a photo and I have to paint them. So here we go. I'm just using my little watercolour box. I've had it for years. I don't think you can get it anymore, but there's lots of alternatives, and I'll have that in the description below as well. But to start off with, I'm using some cadmium yellow pale and some cadmium yellow deep. So if you don't have any sort of an orangey yellow colour, you could use some red mixed with your yellow. So there's a little alternative there for you already. I'm using my black velvet brushes, which I absolutely love. This is size 10. And I'm just sort of painting on, wet on dry, and as you see there, I'm spattering. The spattering keeps me loose, so I don't tighten up. So I'm just sort of literally just drizzling the paint on, using lots of water, just sticking to these two colours. As you can see there, I'm just swishing the paint around, getting it moving. I'm not sort of copying these daffodils. I'm interpreting them. I'm sort of half closing my eyes just to see the shapes. And again, little spatters, lots of water and more paint. It's so much fun to do. There is a very light drawing on there as a guide, and I used a watercolour pencil so you don't have the hard lines of those, but I will later be drawing into my painting again just to get the shapes of the daffodils back. As you can see here, I'm painting the stems and the leaves of the daffodils. I find them quite easy to paint. You just sort of press your brush down, lift off, and I'm using a mixture of the cadmium yellow pale and some ultramarine. I've got a little bit of cobalt blue there and even some Prussian blue. I'm using Quinacridone gold here and a little bit of violet to paint the earth, and I'm just bringing up some of those darks, wet into wet onto the stems and leaves, and again a little spatter. Another way you can loosen up is not actually have any drawing. So I didn't actually draw any of the stems, certainly didn't draw the sky in. So I'm painting this wet and wet now with my size 10 brush, and now actually using lemon Brusho. And Brushos are kind of a highly pigmented watercolor ink that comes in these little drums, and they're like crystallized little powders, and you can put them on dry paper and spritz them just like I'm doing here, or you can put them on a wet surface, which is what I'm doing here, and you get these tiny explosions of little colors, and they just react so well with the water, and they definitely keep you loose. And I've actually made a video all about Brusho, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. Now my painting has dried. I also sprinkled some salt as well, so I've got some amazing effects here. And before I go on painting, I thought I'd just pull out a few daffodils because they've kind of all just merged into one, which again, it kept me loose. So to get a little bit of structure to my painting, I'm using my HB pencil, and I'm just drawing in now some daffodils, kind of almost just using this abstract background that I've created, and almost getting some new daffodils, because a lot of the daffodils I had before, the watercolour pencil outlines has actually disappeared, so I can actually maybe enlarge them or just take advantage of some of the shapes now that are in the background. It's so therapeutic to paint like this. It's so creative. I'm using my size 6 brush, and I'm just using some of the warmer yellow now and just creating or painting this sort of outside edge of the trumpet that's coming out from the centre there, and just using some of the paler yellow on the petals, working wet on dry and using lots of water, trying to keep my light, which is very important. So I've got 3 main daffodils that I've decided to use, and I will actually put a link in the description below as well. Is I painted, I created a tutorial last year on some daffodils, which are a little bit different to what I'm doing here. It's a lot more structured, painting light to dark, whereas this is very, very loose. So you may enjoy that as well, just to see the 2 different, well, there's lots of different ways of painting in watercolour, but you may enjoy how I painted those as well. So I'm using some green now in the background, bluey green, to pull out the shape of the daffodils by using the negative space, i.e. the background. And I'm also using lots of water to soften the outside edge so you don't get a hard edge anywhere. But look at that, it really brings those daffodils out, and it's kind of a background from the imagination. I'm not painting all the busy leaves that are in the photograph. I just want to keep this quite abstract and atmospheric. As you can see there, I'm pushing water up so I don't create a hard edge, which will be distracting and take the attention away from the stars of my show, of my painting, these daffodils. So I'm going to work my way round now with these dark sort of greens, the blue and the yellow mixed together, and just soften the edges as I go. As you can see there, I'm just working in the centres there to bring out and to make the daffodils look a little bit 3D without getting too tight. So I mixed up some of the warmer yellow there and added a little bit of violet as well. So it just sort of creates not quite a brown colour, but it just darkens up that sort of orangey yellow there. I'm going to work my way round now with my size 4 or 6 brush if you fancy. I'm going to sort of change them up, just working on the centres here, wet on dry, and then softening with some water. So just finishing off the centre of the daffodils there and painting some of the stems and leaves wet on dry, using my size 10 brush with a mixture of the Ultramarine and the Cadmium Yellow Pale. I'm using that same colour, just a little bit darker. The painting has dried underneath the leaves and I'm just painting a little bit of shadow colour now, just underneath the petals there, just to bring the daffodils out a little bit more and keep everything loose still. I don't want to get into too much detail. I thought I'd put a wash at the bottom on the ground of the daffodils with a mixture of the deep yellow and the violet. It makes a lovely brown, and just putting a very thin transparent glaze here just to soften everything back a little here and to create the look of shadows or dappled sunlight. And I'm spattering now just the yellow over the leaves, over the daffodils, just to create some lovely textures, and again just to keep me loose so I don't get tightened up. It can happen so easily, but a little spatter here and there can really keep you loose, and I really recommend it. It's so much fun. So I'm actually just sort of developing and finishing off the centres here with a little bit more dark, and I've actually used some raw sienna. If you don't have raw sienna, you could use yellow ochre or quinacridone gold even, and I've added a touch of the violet to that colour as well. I'm just lifting off now with my plastic card the damp paint, so make sure it's not too wet or else it might just all run back on itself or even tear your paper. And I'm just finishing off some of the centres as well, using a mixture of the yellow and violet with my size 4 brush, and I'm going to leave it there now to dry. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and that it has inspired you to loosen up your watercolours and maybe have a go at painting some spring daffodils. If you'd like to see more tutorials like this, don't forget, if you haven't already, to subscribe to my YouTube channel where you'll get updates of my latest tutorials. And if you'd like to ask any questions, please put them in the comments section below. Thank you again for watching. Happy painting. Bye for now.